I'm really happy to be here today. I have modified my attire. I figure I have the proper shirt on this level for being in a business meeting, but I also wanted to wear this because I've been involved in climate change protests and actions for a very long time. First Earth Day, it goes back a while. And I think it's important because, we're in this mess today because people didn't listen. And I had always thought not listening began a little bit more recently, but then I found there was an article about a Bell Labs TV show that was on network TV in 1958, and they talked about the threat of climate change from greenhouse gases. And I'm thinking, 1958, so that's what, 66 years of ignoring stuff? It's a long time. I think it's really hard to ignore things that are in front of your face for that long, but apparently it's possible to do. And I think, where we are now, we started down this path in 2017, and we made a decision we were going to have a climate action plan. There were a few of us on the council who picked a very aggressive date. Not everybody wanted to go to 2035, and I can honestly say we picked 2035. We had no idea how exactly we would get to 2035, but we knew that the science was changing, and so what was possible in 2017 wasn't going to define what was possible in the future. And we also knew if we set an easily achievable goal that we would achieve the goal, we'd have a celebration, and then we'd wait for another group to come along and say, this really wasn't enough, we need to do more. And we didn't want to do that. And I would rather set a goal that is unachievable and get as close to it as humanly possible than set an achievable goal and then say, well, mission accomplished, because until we really get to zero, we really haven't accomplished our mission. So I would say that, over the years, I feel like we're living in the best of times and the worst of times. On the one hand, the news gets worse pretty much every day. And it's kind of astounding. I mean, you cannot look at, whether it's the Greenland glacier or the Arctic or the Antarctic or record March was, the 10th month in a row with record heat. You can't look at that and not be alarmed, I think. I just don't know how it's possible to ignore what is plainly in front of us. And it's been a struggle. You saw that in the Maryland legislature this year when things disappeared overnight. That was kind of disappointing. We struggle to fund things. I've had things in my budget that got taken out that I didn't think should have been taken out. I don't know how people can say we can't afford to fight climate change because we sure as hell can't afford to deal with climate change. It is going to be stunningly expensive. And as we're looking at our stormwater issues right now, we're looking at billions of dollars to replace pipes in order to have pipes that are big enough to handle the storm sizes that we're going to have in Montgomery County, or people deal with flooding. And I suspect that flooding is not a good alternative, so we're going to have to fix this. I think my biggest regret in all this is really the failure of the political system to put the bill in the hands of people who actually created this problem. To allow, when you know that Exxon knew and their scientists told them what was going to happen, and then Exxon spent hundreds of millions of dollars on commercials and advertising to convince people that climate change was a hoax. And then we arrive here and Exxon's got no liability for what they did. None of these companies have any liability for what they did. And that means it lands on us. And I don't take this on because I'm excited about spending all this money. I take it on because it's something we have to do. But it really shouldn't be us in this alone, and there needs to be at some point enough political will to bring the corporate polluters and the people who benefited from leading us down this merry road, to bring them to justice and make them pay for, at least help us get out from under all this. And obviously, I wore this shirt for a reason. This idea that science is some kind of liberal conspiracy is really infecting society. This lack of belief in science, which is, I'd say, more unique to the United States than the rest of the world, though apparently it's spreading in Europe as well. Not believing what you see or what you can see is really distressing. I mean, you cannot advance a society if you're not willing to confront the truth and think about what do you do with the truth and how do you find solutions to the problems. I mean, I understand that it's daunting and people might want to throw up their hands, but the fact is the good things that have happened over the last few years are actually meaningful. There was no hydrogen, and I remember getting criticized by my environmental friends because we didn't have a hydrogen piece in our original climate plan because people said that's vaporware. We don't know if this is really going to be real. And here we are not so many years later. And there are multiple sources of hydrogen being developed and multiple ways of producing hydrogen. And not all of them are stunningly expensive. And so something that just 5 and 6 years ago seemed like, when's that going to happen, is now something that's getting closer to reality. And I think those are the kinds of things that are really, really encouraging. There will be a new generation of solar panels. They'll use Perxivite, and it'll yield higher yields of solar energy. It'll lower cost than current panels. There's lots of stuff that's happening in the right direction, but we're still dealing with this major mess that faces us. And I'll say, personally, this Monday, an electrician is going to come to my house and add two 240 lines, one for an electric hybrid water heater. My water heater is only 6 years old, but I'm going to get rid of it. And it's going to take out my stove, and it's going to put in an induction stove in the kitchen. So, and then later this year, I probably go to a hybrid heat pump heating system for the house, because the stuff's all out there now. And thanks to the federal and state programs, all this stuff is much more affordable than it would have been before. So we can do this work, and I'm just really excited about being in a county where we can do this work. I want to thank John and Sarah, who I'm going to introduce later. You've provided great leadership for us, and with strong direction in the departments and a commitment to getting this work done, we are really moving down the path. And I see the Rabia, Rabia works in the building sector. He's our permitting director, and his ability to get the department to be flexible and to rewrite things and put us in a position to move forward is really important for us. I just wanted to also appreciate so many people in this county who've been the champions of this. This climate plan was put together with hundreds of citizens. Fortunately, because of the Trump years, people in the EPA didn't have anything to do, and so we had EPA volunteers working for us because there was really nothing to do at the federal level back then. Now there's stuff to do again. We don't have that source to tap on, but when we needed it, we had it. And it really made a difference in our plan. We put together a plan without paid experts initially to understand what we could do. We brought in the other people to help us figure out how to balance all the things that were in the plan and how to come up with something implementable. But so much work came out of the community, and the work was good work, and it really made a difference in what we were able to do. So there's some, I think, important things happening now. We've adopted the green building codes, and we've issued the BEPS regulations, building energy performance. We're hoping the council doesn't water it down too much, because if you don't clean up the built environment, there is no achieving any climate goals. And I'll say this now, and I've said this over and over again. The government can do everything it can do. We will not solve this problem if individuals do not take individual action. If you don't get an electric car, if you don't switch your appliances from gas to electric, if you don't do that stuff, we don't get there. And sometimes people think, well, the government's going to solve this. This is one of those things that everybody has to solve. It's not solvable by the government by itself. We can help with funding. We're helping with funding. We're going to continue to help with funding. As John said, there's an enormous amount of money coming from the feds, and you said we may get millions. I want to just be, we'll get tens of millions out of this grant. It's just a question of how many tens of millions. But that money is going to go right back into the community. It's going to create jobs, and it's going to help us knock down the amount of greenhouse gases that we create here in the county. The Green Bank has already provided energy savings to 2,500 households, and estimated they created about 500 jobs. Nearly 61% of the Green Bank's portfolio is invested in low and moderate income and equitable emphasis area communities. And just so you understand, that's important to us, because we could green a bunch of buildings, and if the owners have to eat the entire cost, there are a bunch of tenants who won't be living there anymore. And we know who they are. They're in the older buildings. They have the oldest systems. Maybe it's a good time to replace them, so the investments make some sense. But without being aware of what we're doing, we could wind up displacing people in the county at a serious level. And we're conscious about that, and we're going to make sure that we don't do it. Got ahead of the curve by having the first green bank in the nation. And now Roger Blender, we don't see him. He's out in Colorado or trout fishing now or something like that. But Roger was a big driver behind getting the Green Bank, and that I think really put us out in front for many things. We are also enhancing our sustainability programs countywide. We have 20 car dealers now offering EV incentives through the electrified dealer program. And cars are really exciting because within a year or two, you're going to see cars in the sub $30,000 range. You're going to see stuff coming in around $25,000. And if BYD comes over here, they've got a $10,000 car that gets about 180 miles range. And they've done some really innovative things, and I think the automakers here are terrified of BYD entering the market. But that should inspire them to figure out what BYD is doing, because if BYD has a manufacturing plant that can bring the cost of batteries down to that level, we ought to be doing the same thing. To bolster our resilience to a rapidly changing climate, we installed 35 flood sensors, inspected 16,000 stormwater facilities, and we've planted over 11,000 trees. We're changing our recycling, and we have our policy for years, we either landfill it or we burn it. Neither one of those are really good solutions, and we did very little initially in terms of what we reclaimed or what we recycled, because all the incentive was putting everything into the incinerator and torching it. We're going to shut the incinerator, but as part of that, we're not going to shut the incinerator and send everything to a landfill. This is our opportunity to get serious about recycling and reusing things, and the department is already doing this. I used to go up there, and I'll be honest, 5-6 years ago, I was embarrassed by how little we did. I would look at all these other jurisdictions that had massive reclamation projects, and they were using all kinds of materials, and we weren't doing it. Now we are. We have medical equipment. If you've got a wheelchair you're no longer using, or you're not using and it needs some repair, we're taking those and we're fixing them and giving them back to people. We're actually collecting bicycles. We're beginning to separate construction waste. We're planning for a new plastic facility that'll separate all of our plastic, as opposed to us sending some of it away, and it'll separate it into high value. One of the things that I'm trying to drive in what we do with reshaping our waste facility is to monetize everything that's in there. Everything there has some value to somebody. And if you don't, my favorite story is glass. So we send glass out in dirty bottles. That's our recycling. And it goes to somebody who washes it, crushes it, and then sells it. And obviously they make money because they're paying us for it, but we don't make very much. Maryland passed a law saying the cement industry has to decarbonize. It turns out that one of the most efficient ways for the cement industry to decarbonize is to introduce glass. And now we'll get even more nerdy. So if you get the glass, if you break it into particles about a 1/4 inch or so, it can substitute for the aggregate that they buy and put into the cement. If you powder it, it becomes pozzoli, which is the thing you actually make cement from. And then the fun part is it's actually stronger than regular sand-based cement, because sand is round and it has a tendency to slip even when it dries. Glass is jagged, and jagged pieces tend to interlock with each other, so it actually has greater strength than a typical sand cement. And we got a ton of glass. We have many tons of glass. And so we're looking for ways to actually grind or shatter our glass and turn it into a product that we can monetize. We can do this same thing with food. We'll do a digester, we'll yield methane off a digester. Methane can power buses in the interim until hydrogen comes along. We can use methane to spin out electricity. I was in a place in California. One of them used the methane to directly spin a turbine and send electricity into the grid. The other one used the methane to replace their entire trash fleet with natural gas trucks, and then the methane from the digester fuels the natural gas trucks, and saving them buying a lot of natural gas or oil or diesel to run those trucks. So I think that's a pretty exciting place for us to be, and I'm very excited about the work we're going to do up there. I'm excited about our ability to start providing tax credits to people, and it's in this budget, about $365 million is going to support our efforts to combat climate change. Some of it is, stuff we normally do, but it's being done in a way where it's much more sensitive to how we deal with the environment. We've got energy efficient building property tax credits and a commercial property assessed clean energy called CPACE. I would kill to get residential PACE. Residential PACE would allow a homeowner to finance the cost of solar installation on their tax bill. And this is blocked by one force and one force only, the banks. The banks will let you buy a car for $60,000, let you take a second loan on your house, will not let you take a CPACE loan or an RPACE loan to put solar panels on your roof. How an industry can be that backward and let you go into massive debt on your credit cards, but somehow have a problem about whether you want to finance this. And this is a big deal for homeowners, because it would be a tiny bit on your annual bill, and it would let you pay for this over 10 to 20 years, as opposed to trying to figure out the money on the beginning and put together all these other incentives. And at some point, the banking industry is going to have to crack and give it on this one, because this is too big for us to walk away from and not be able to use it. I get in this 2-minute warning. I feel like I'm in a football game. I want to thank the Maryland Energy Administration and Maryland Clean Energy Center for providing financing options for some of this work, like the commercial energy efficiency tech. I want to thank the Secretary for being here today. You did great work, and you led a really great effort at the state level, and I know a lot of us were disappointed by what happened in the middle of the night. But hopefully we're back again next year stronger and more determined than ever. And I think people have to, at some point, have to be political consequences for things people do. I mean, as a community organizer, if you're not talking about how you tie people's actions to how you vote, then you're not organizing. And you're also not as effective as you might otherwise be. So I encourage people to, get active, be involved, push us. I'm a former activist, still am an activist, so who am I kidding? So things change because people push. And we don't want people to be uncomfortable about pushing. We may not be able to do everything, but if there's not a constant nudge from the bottom, this doesn't get done. And we really need to build a push for the bottom in this county. You cannot do this top-led only. Top-led only goes so far. It has to be at the community level. There have to be people in the community saying, this is where we want this county to go, this is where we want this country to go. If we can do that and do more of it, I think we'll have even stronger program than we have now.